Ian is now going to come and share this part of the service of appreciation, and then we look at the other items. May God bless us as we share together happy memories and great hope. Thank you.
Let me welcome you all to Emmanuel Church, especially those of you who are not familiar with being here. Those of you on the front rows are especially welcome. And Charles will give you all a big hug when they bring you in. You're welcome to be here. Charles joined what was then the Full Gospel Church in 1965. And do you know what actually happened? It's not everywhere you actually hear stories like this, but what had happened was there had been a miracle of healing. And John has given to a number of us, or I've got a copy myself, of a tremendous disc he's done of the whole story of what happened when a group of naughty little boys ran away to Manchester, having seen a television programme, and was actually witnessed an instantaneous healing of somebody who had epilepsy. It seemed to be incurable till then, didn't it, John? And as a result, if you want to ask him the whole story, he'll tell you the whole story. But the boys were recommended to what was then the church here in Fleetwood, the Full Gospel Church. And I think Charles is to be commended in that he had the humility to investigate this place. I worry about where my children go, and I hope you worry about where your children go if you have children. And he came to find out what on earth these boys had got themselves mixed up with. Having said that, he wasn't the most amazing detective. He could be deceived. They'd actually given him the dodge at Castle Gardens. They'd hidden in the men's toilets while he came looking for them, and he couldn't find them. And they got away. Poor Charles. Fancy taking advantage of your dad like that. Within a couple of weeks, Pastor Stanley Smith, as Michael's father, gave Charles a job to do as the church treasurer. That's enough to make you turn tail and leave a church, isn't it? I should have thought that. But he faithfully fulfilled that job right up until his retirement. And Charles remained throughout his life a man of principle and of integrity. And it was a tough position, trying to balance the books on one hand and faith on the other. Poor lad, he really struggled. And I was party to a number of his perplexities and his mum, going on about the thing. He used to really upset him sometimes, trying to make it work. And I can remember still, when I think of Charles, I can remember little red Save It stickers he used to put on all the light switches. One time we had a whole rash in his church of Save It stickers on the switches. Morris, who now is our treasurer, told me how Charles never despised even the smallest gift. Of course, you get some weird things sometimes put in the bag, as you can imagine, all sorts of things go in the bag. But he was always genuinely appreciative of whatever was given. He took it like the widow's mite, as something as an offering to God, and he took it that way. And here I perhaps need to remonstrate a little with our funeral directors, because Charles was a stickler for punctuality. I have a horrible feeling that can boomerang on us if we're not in time. By the time we finish, we're going to be in trouble. He was a stickler for it. And I can see him now sitting down there at times when we've come in to take the service, and we might have been a minute late, and he's there. Looking at his watch. Didn't need to say any more. He became a preacher of some note and in demand in many of the churches locally, and he faithfully proclaimed the gospel. But he always finished on time. In fact, when he used to begin his messages, he would often begin by saying, "I will be finished at such and such a time." And he always was, bless him. I don't know how he managed to prepare his messages so effectively, because I remember he once told me, he looked despairingly at me. He said, "I am incapable of original thought." Oh, no, you're not, Charles. You're doing all sorts of wonderful ideas, but there you are. And he had that intense expression when he looked at you that had an intriguing trace of humour in it, you know what I mean? And I never really knew whether to take him seriously or not. It made me laugh even when he was serious. He was lovely. But he was certainly creative as a magician. And young and old authors were enthralled and fascinated at his magic tricks. And I remember a number of them, but the one that really stands out for me is the one where he shows how the blood of Jesus cleanses our sin away. And I can see the black liquid becoming white right in front of our eyes. It was fantastic. Or clear, I should say, shouldn't it? It was clean. And he loved hymns, didn't he? He'd often read out a verse of it so that it could be sung again. And if he were leading the service, he would always make anyone who requested a hymn read the first line of it, the first verse, you know. We had a very touching scene just recently. We have a couple who live now in Holland, Mike and Julie Fowles. And when Charles was poorly, they came over, and Julie had it laid on her heart by God to somehow get a small group of singers into the hospital to sing to Charles in Ward 22. And happily we were able to effect that, and they made the day room available for us, and a number of singers went down and sang to Charles. And do you know what they made him do? They made him read one of the verses of the hymn that they sang. And Heather, where are you, Heather? She's here. There you are. She's going to sing to us shortly, but she sang there as well. That was a really touching moment, a very special moment toward this latter end of Charles's life down here. Charles loved people. He had a gregarious and affable manner, and it endeared him both to old and young alike. Now, if I can find it, I've got a note here from Mark Sumner, one of his recollections. He says, "My earliest memory of Charles Cooper was on the steps of the old Lowther Road building. It was my first visit to the Full Gospel Church." We're going back now to the mid-60s. "And Morris Dowsing introduced him to me as Mr. Cooper. But Charles thrust out his hand to me in a warm, friendly gesture and simply said, 'Charlie.' Reassuringly, which broke the ice and calmed down my nervousness and apprehension. I was later privileged to be baptized by Charles and by Michael, and my eldest daughter Rachel and son Paul were also baptized by Charles. And of course Charles, for many years, used to help Michael doing the baptisms. You know, we have full baptisms here. We put them right down in the water. So he used to get himself wet, bless him. Thinking of Charles, actually, he's often getting himself wet, isn't he? I can see scenes of him splashing about in the river at, what's it called? Devil's Bridge and all that, yeah. Bless him. I'm not pausing for effect, I'm just finding my place in my notes, you're alright. Many of us have precious and happy memories of these church and family days out and outings and hikes many of which were captured on film, on 8mm film that Charles used. And they've become a tremendous source of research now and all sorts of things. Particularly, he used to do a lot of the weddings, didn't he? In fact, my wedding is on that. Yours may be as well. Charles took photographs of them. And he had a wonderful sense of humour. That's a great attribute to have, isn't it? Andrea, is Andrea here? Yes, there you are. Hiding behind my brother-in-law. She has a story about the time when she was just a very young Christian, and the church had an outing. Somebody went out somewhere on a mission somewhere, and they were going from door to door, knocking at these doors. Now, if you knew Andrea, this fits exactly into context, but she happened to knock on a door that seemed extremely quiet because it was a morgue. And she's standing knocking at the door of this morgue completely innocently, thinking it's an ordinary door. And Charles said to her, "If anyone comes to the door, you better run for it." Even in hospital, he was still fooling around. And one of my memories is going to stay with me now. You know these paper bowls, basins they have there. And he had this thing on his head, while I visited him only recently. Packed in the gold. But above all, Charles Cooper was a godly man. He was a friend of Jesus's. Morris told me recently on one occasion, going back a little while, when he took communion to Charles and Marjorie, as you would be sitting somewhere over here, I guess. And as he approached them on this particular occasion, he just felt himself entering into a cloud of glory as he approached them. Kind of Shekinah in my mind, that's the word I would use for it. And I pulled Morris's leg yesterday. I said, "Who was next?" As you came out of the Shekinah glory. Never mind, don't worry, you're going to think about that one. But with Charles, it was there. There was something special about being with him. And inevitably, I have my own personal memories of my friend, Charles. Charles and Marjorie have been very good and close friends to my mum and dad, as well as to myself and Gillian and our children. In 1977, he became a colleague on our team here at Fleetwood. And he used to tease our children. He may have done it with your children, but of course I only saw it with mine. And he'd come up and he'd say to them, "I see a making," he'd say. They wouldn't know how to deal with it. He did say that, didn't he? Yeah. My 17-year-old daughter here, Polly, and her friends cried at the news of Charles' passing. To them, he was the authentic Father Christmas. Do you believe in Father Christmas? I do. He was you could pull his beard and it wouldn't come off. Isn't that fantastic? You could also look into his eyes, and that loving twinkle would reach all the way to heaven. And that's the mark of a man. How do children relate to him? How do the innocents approach him? Isaac Chantrell, who's here today, has drawn a picture of him with his beard. I'll give it you afterwards, Marjorie. And his older brother, Luke, writes this: "I like the way he did tricks. He made us laugh. He was very funny." Charles, we of Emmanuel Church salute you. in this, our loving farewell. You can tell the angels, and they glorified God.